Hey, what's up everyone, Sangritan here, and we're back for another episode of Spice for Thought. This is episode 17, and it is part 3 on the Imperium cards, basically going through every card from base game, Rise of X and Immortality, giving my thoughts on their strength, weaknesses, and potential synergies, combos, and so on, and then ending up the video with placing them on that matrix with all the cards being sort of ranked if we'd like. So yeah, this will use basically the same matrix as we've already used for part 1 and 2. So if you haven't seen them already, I would strongly recommend you to get out of here, go check that part 1, which was episode 15, part 2, episode 16, and now then come back to part 3 once you've seen those, so that you can better follow along what we've done so far. So yeah, in those previous episodes, we've covered all the cards with 1 persuasion, 2 persuasion, and 3. Now we will cover all those 4 costers. So, as usual, if you could hit that like button if you enjoy, it would be greatly appreciated. Subscribe to not miss out on any future content, because there will be a part 4 on this series. Not going to spoil anything, but obviously there are more than just 4 persuasions in costs of cards, so we will go on with the part 4. And yeah, let me know as well in the comments if there's anything you disagree with, or if you have any other suggestion. I'd be very curious to hear about that. So yeah. So let's dive in those 4 costers. The first one here would be Spice Trader. Spice Trader is a Fremen card from the Rise of X expansion and has a very strong reveal. To be honest, all those Fremen cards with 2 persuasion and swords are very versatile. In my opinion, quite low risk to pick, so I would say a high floor. And it has also an interesting agent effect, which only can be triggered when you have 2 influence with the Fremen or more, in which case you can discard a card to gain 2 spice. This is quite strong, especially again if you have one of those cards that has an unknown effect, then it's basically a free spice, because you get to trigger its reveal action early by discarding the card and get something out of that by playing Spice Trader and getting that 2 spice. So that's very strong. Could also imagine comboing it, for instance, with the Guild Impersonator, that card from the Tlelaxu row, which gives you a bump on the Spacing Guild track if you gained spice during your turn. So with that, you can gain spice with the agent effect of this card. So if you graft them together, you would be able to generate the spice that is required for the Guild Impersonator. So that's one idea of a mechanics that could work for it. But overall, this spice can be so useful. So I like this card also for the reveal. So yeah, very strong card. The right hand side here, we would have Bennett Lilacs Researcher, the card from Immortality. Very, very strong. I really like that card for 2 reasons. One is the fact that it is nice to play for the grafting with the research action. So you could typically graft it to experimentation and get 2 research actions at once. This could be an idea. Obviously you can graft it to any other card you'd like, which also has maybe a strong agent effect, so that can be pretty strong. But where it's also super good is for that reveal. So it reveals for 1 persuasion, which is not amazing, but as soon as you reach that first genetic marker, which should be fairly easy given this card allows you to get closer to that genetic marker, then it reveals for 2 persuasion, and once you reach the end of the track, more often than not, you'd like not to play that card, because then it has a total of 3 persuasion. So very strong card, very high floor, because it has that graft and research action. You can play it anytime, and pretty high ceiling as well, because once you reach that end of the research track, revealing for 3 persuasion should make Spice Must flows much more easier for you. Then we have Web of Power, probably the most broken card at 4 cost, to be honest. This has an insane high floor and ceiling, to be honest, because, I mean, 3 things basically. The entire card is busted, but all 3 of those. The fact that it infiltrates Bene Gesserit later in the game is insane, because it allows you to go selective reading anytime, and you can prioritize maybe other draws if you need some other stuff. Like you can first go Research Station if you have first action, you can then maybe go Menta or Technico and keep Web of Power to selective as the last action. On top of that, it doesn't only draw you 2 cards, right? Because it allows you to draw an extra card, typically if you have 2 influence with the guild, 2 Solari if you have 2 influence with the Emperor, and a water as well, maybe facilitating another research station down the line if you have 2 influence with the Fremen. And what is great is it is a card that self-suffices almost, because early in the game you'd rather not play it, you reveal it, or a bump, just like that. You even choose where to take that bump. So yeah, you can easily reach that 2 influence pretty much everywhere, because you reveal it once, twice, 3 times, and you basically are almost there already. And later in the game, you probably will play it selective if you need to, and benefit also from that very strong agent effect. So absolutely busted card. The other side, Clandestine Meeting, this card has no agent icon, but has an agent effect, meaning it is designed to be grafted with something. So again, very low floor, because if you cannot get a graft with it, it's basically a convincing argument. At least that, one might say. It at least has 2 persuasion, but yeah, it's not overwhelming. But if you can graft it, let's say with the plant coupling, going to selective with it, you get a bump from that selective action, you draw a card from plant coupling, you get another bump here and an intrigue. This can be pretty nice. So the ceiling is higher, thankfully, than its floor, because the floor is basically bottom with the value of a convincing argument. Siege Reverend Mother next, quite a strong card. I really like the accesses, the fact it can trash as well, so it has a high floor, to be honest, for those nice accesses, and for the fact you can trash. It also has a reasonably high ceiling, because you can combo it maybe with cards that have an unload effect to trash something when you go Hardy Warriors, for instance, trash a Freighter Fleet, recall from the track, get a nice big deployment in the combat. And it also has a Fremen bond that reveals for something, at least. And it is a pretty good something when you can get that Fremen bond going. It is 3 persuasion, which, as we said before, is insanely good, plus a spice that is non-neglectable. So yeah, good card overall, especially for the accesses and the trash early in the game. Maybe later in the game you can combo it with Fremen to reveal it and get spice plus flows with it. So steadily good card. Guild Chief Administrator, we have talked about that card a couple of times in the previous episodes of that series when it came to unload effects, because this is the card by excellence for unload effects, because you can discard a card to then allow you to trash a card. It doesn't need to be the same card, but you could typically imagine doing that with a Freighter Fleet, discard it from your hand, get 1 Freighter action, so 1 shipping action, and trash it from your discard pile afterwards, get a second Freighter action. So this is pretty nice. Also has a reasonably high floor, because you can reveal it for a Freighter action itself if you don't feel like using that effect, which, to be honest, at least early in the game, more often than not, you probably don't, because you need your persuasion to maybe buy better cards. Maybe you still use it to go full space, unlocking shipping and so on, but more often than not, you just reveal it, gain some momentum on the shipping track, so that is pretty good as well. Then we have Smuggler Thopter. This requires 2 influence on the guild track, otherwise I would recommend not buying it before that, because it basically equates to Dune the Desert Planet, if not maybe just revealing for 1 more spice, but it's not something you really desire. So get that 2 influence, and from there on it becomes quite a strong card. With Immortality I'm a bit less of a fan, because again, you kind of need to play your experimentations more often than not, and this replaces experimentations to a certain extent, because you kind of want to play it when you see it. But it's still a reasonably good card. Drawing 2 cards is insanely good, so yeah, it's still a card that is worth pickup. Floor pretty low, because again, you need 2 influence there to even be able to make it work, but ceiling can become quite high, because it allows you to cycle through your deck and maybe get to your better cards more often. Imperial Bashar has an interesting agent effect where you can make a choice basically between a troop or a trash, but where it's more used usually is for its reveal. It has this compound effect for swords. We also talked about Imperial Bashar a couple of times with cards that reveal for swords, because this is the card that puts them all together, because it reveals for 2 swords, which is already pretty strong, but it also gives you one more sword for each card that reveals swords. So not for each sword, for each card. But basically, if you have that combined with an artillery, the tech that basically has the exact same effect here, you can compound an insane number of swords. I mean, I've easily seen 15 to 20 swords revealed with this kind of deck when it works fine. I don't say it works every time, but it is quite niche, but has a high ceiling if it works. Firm Grip, also a very strong card. Very, very good, because it allows you to get a bump on the other tracks other than Emperor, because this card brings you to Emperor. So basically you can send it to Wealth, gets you the Solari from Wealth, and you can directly use this Solari for another bump. In essence, giving you 2 bumps by playing this card, 1 on Wealth, 1 wherever else you would like. So that's already pretty good. And on top of that, you are highly incentivized to go for the Alliance, because then it reveals for 4 persuasion, the most any card reveals for. So this is very strong, has a high ceiling. The floor is also relatively high thanks to these bumps, but there is a stage in the game where it might become worthless. If you have your friendships, cannot fight for any other alliance, and don't have the Emperor Alliance, then this card kinda loses its purpose. But it's still insanely strong. I would recommend to go for it blindly early game. You have to take that. It's a very good card. Interstellar Conspiracy, also an interesting card. Reveals for 2 persuasion, making its floor high by definition, and has a grafting capacity, which is also very good. Gives you 1 spice by default, and if you graft this card with an Emperor or Spacing Guild card, typically Firm Grip for an example, you would be able to get another bump directly. So this is a nice little combo. It is quite complicated to get it going, because there are not that many like insanely good Emperor / Spacing Guild cards, so you might not be able to do it as often as you would like, but with a small deck, with good draw power, you might still be able to get 1 or 2 bumps out of that, which is already very good. And one interesting combo that you can get going with that is typically with the Guild Impersonator, the card we talked about before, that if you gain spice on your turn, gives you a guild bump. And by the way, that card also has a guild access and is a Spacing Guild card, meaning you could imagine sending Conspiracy grafted to Guild Impersonator, both to Full Space or to Highliner, because Guild Impersonator has a Spacing Guild access, so that gives you 1 bump. Then Guild Impersonator would give you a Spacing Guild bump because you earn a spice on your turn, thanks to this card. Then you graft this card with a Spacing Guild card because it's a because Guild Impersonator is 1, giving you 1 more bump, for instance, on Spacing Guild if you need it. So that could be as much as 3 bumps without even counting an intrigue. Let's say you have another one like a bribery or a strong arm. You could even get 4 bumps at once by going to the guild action spaces with this card grafted to Guild Impersonator. That's again a very niche scenario, but there are still quite some cases where this card becomes useful, and worst case it reveals for 2 persuasion, so it's not the worst card to add to your deck. Now we have Duncan Idaho from the base game. This card reveals for no persuasion, so that makes it a bit weak in my opinion. Still reveals for 2 swords. It is not a Fremen card though, so this is good to keep in mind because it doesn't combo with all the Fremen bonds you might have. Feeds you 1 water, which is good, but in my opinion, it's a card more often than not I don't pick because of the lack of persuasion here and the cost there, because a troop and a draw are not too bad, but paying a water for it hurts a bit more often than not. So it is a card that, in my opinion, has a ceiling that is okayish, because you could still deploy nicely from a city space if you go for it. But the floor is pretty low because of the lack of persuasion and the cost of this agent effect. Then we have landing rights here. Landing rights is from the Rise of X expansion, reveals for 2 persuasion, which is always good, and gives you city access, giving you a freighter action. So this is basically similar to the Ring of Handro Moritani, except it doesn't cost you a spice, so that's good. And you can maybe set up on the shipping track on that 2nd level, typically go on a city space with landing rights, and recall directly, deploying basically 5 troops, 2 from the shipping track, 1 from the city space you visited. Considering you're not going research station, you would recruit 1 troop from there, so that's 3 plus 2 that you could deploy from your garrison if you have one. We could imagine even a meaner deployment if, let's say, the bump you take from the shipping track sends you to the alliance bonus of the Emperor track. That's an additional 2 troops. Or even, let's say, you're on the top of the shipping track and you see invasion ships in the tech row. You have enough spies to grab it when recalling from the shipping track by doing that on a city space. Invasion ships, when you purchase it, gives you 4 troops. So that would be 4 troops plus 2 from the shipping track, that's 6, plus 1 from the city space, that's 7, plus 2 from a garrison, that's 9. Let's assume on top of that you get the Emperor bonus, that would be 11. That would be an absolute insane deployment all at once. Obviously, that's a very unique case that happens probably once every 100 games or whatever. But it's still worth mentioning because deploying 11 at once would be pretty unique. Worth mentioning, for this kind of play, obviously you need to basically have almost an empty garrison because you recruit 9 troops on that moment. So you would have to have at least, at maximum, at most 3 troops or 3 cubes used amongst your garrison, your tech negotiators, and your specimens. All of them take from the same 12 cubes in terms of limited supply. So this is something to keep an eye out, not only for this kind of crazy deployment, but also, let's say, if you want to go Highliner. I'm digressing there a bit. Let's move on to the next cards. We have Throne Room Politics, which is from Immortality, brings you to Emperor spaces. So that is quite limited because more often than not, you don't have the spice for Conspire, so it's only about wealth more often than not. It gives you a troop and a trash, which are pretty good, but the real interest of that card is on the reveal. More often than not, that's what you will be willing to do, is getting a passive Bene Gesserit bump. And this is basically an extra action on your reveal, always welcome. So the floor is pretty high on that card thanks to that. So yeah, a pretty good card. Lisan al-Gaib, also from the Immortality expansion, has 1 spice when you buy it, so that's more often than not why you buy it, to be honest. It does have nice accesses, especially that Fremen, because it can potentially combo with its agent effect. If you have another Bene Gesserit card in play, you get a Fremen bump. So if you go on a Fremen space and you are able to trigger that effect, you can get a double Fremen bump, which might mean an alliance deal, might mean an easy friendship, and so on. So it is something to keep in mind in your deck building. It's not a card I would automatically buy because the floor is pretty low, but if you have a deck set up for it, it can be a nice card. And very late in the game, if you're last to reveal, or if you see absolutely no risk in uncovering a card that might benefit your opponents, you can also just buy it for a potential spice tiebreaker. Sometimes it is this close, so maybe that 1 spice could save you. So yeah, not bad of a card, but it's not a crazy high floor, so I wouldn't pick it up automatically. Then we have Guild Ambassador from the base game, brings you to green spaces, is a Spacing Guild card, by the way, so this is also one that you could potentially combo with Interstellar Conspiracy we saw before to graft it and get maybe double bump on the guild faction. And what is pretty interesting with that card is, again, you have a choice, so that can give you some easy guild influence if needed, or it can also provide you spice, bringing you maybe on tech negotiation, allowing you in fact to buy a tech in a pretty easy way, because tech negotiation would give you 1 discount on the tech you want to buy. This can give you 2 spice, so that's already basically 3 spice knocked off of the cost of the tech you want to buy. But more often than not, you actually buy this card because you can see a path to getting the alliance. And in that case, this card can become very strong because it is, again, a unique way to get VPs. Similarly to Sayadina, it is a card that allows you to generate VPs thanks to resources. There, the conditions are a bit tougher because you need the alliance to make it happen, but it is a bit cheaper. 3 spice, definitely cheaper than 3 water. Other than that, it reveals for nothing if you don't have the alliance, so then it becomes a card you kind of have to play, to be honest, on Menta to get spice or cash, but it has a relatively low floor. Once you reach that friendship and you don't see a path to Spacing Guild alliance, this is a pretty dead card in your deck, but other than that, it has a very high ceiling. Still a good card though, and the floor is still not that low because it can help you generate spice or influence that you might need. Negotiated withdrawal. This is a very good card, very high floor thanks to that 2 persuasion. Has also all the non-faction spaces in case you want to play it, but to be honest, more often than not you don't want to play it because it has 2 persuasion, but also because of that unique effect there where you can retreat 3 of your units. So that includes dreadnoughts, by the way, if you feel like it, but more often than not, to be honest, if you have a dreadnought, you kind of want to leave it in the fight because that's a free troop, basically, because it comes back to your garrison if you don't win the fight. So it's one that you can keep milking out for cheap resources, but you can basically retreat 3 troops to then get a bump wherever you want. So this is very strong. It becomes insanely busted if you have the Intrigue Rapid Mobilization that allows you to deploy any number of troops from your garrison. So with that card, you can basically commit to combats, scare your opponents because you might commit 4 or 5 troops in it and opponents will be like, I can't really compete with that, so I might just not even bother. Then you can, like, on your reveal be like, haha, just kidding, I retreat 3 troops, saving them, getting them back in your garrison, getting a free bump for that, and building up your garrison round after round to maybe have 9-10 troops in your garrison round 7 to then send that rapid mobilization out. This is one very niche case. Other than that, you obviously don't really want to build up your garrison to be that many troops because otherwise you can't go eyeliner, you can't get as many specimens as you might want. So use your garrison, don't get it more to 4 or 6 troops in there, unless you have a rapid mobilization or another way to burn them, yeah, that's basically it. You also get a troop when you buy it, so this can also help you just building up your garrison when you're a bit low. So yeah, very high floor. One combo that is worth mentioning as well is with the card Sardaukar Legion, which costs 5, so we will see it in the next episode of this series. This card allows you on the reveal effect as well to deploy up to 3 troops from your garrison. So there you can combo it nicely and basically make your own do-it-yourself web of power by retreating 3 troops, getting a bump and deploying them back with Sardaukar Legion. Or the other way around, if you have no troops in the combat, you can deploy 3 troops from your Sardaukar Legion and then retreat them with negotiated withdrawal, get a bump from that. So this is a nice little synergy to keep in mind as well. And we have Fremen Camp from base game, only has yellow access, so that becomes a bit weaker as we mentioned when you play with Immortality, but it has quite an interesting deployment effect there, where when you go basically on a spice space, that's where it is used most, to be honest. You pay 2 spice to get 3 troops in the fight. Recruit 3 troops. You can obviously still send an additional 2 from your garrison if you have them, so that's a very strong deployment from a desert space, and it is a good card, especially in base game. A bit less in Immortality, but it's still not too bad because again it has a high floor thanks to that reveal. 2 persuasion and a sword is not bad. One interesting synergy to keep in mind with that card is with Ilessa. With Ilessa you can set aside this card using your passive ability. It has only one icon, so when you play it on your second agent turn, sending it to a desert space, you get 1 spice from playing it thanks to your Ilessa passive ability, meaning you basically cut in half this cost. And whatever you get from the spice place you go visit, you at least basically save 1 spice thanks to your Ilessa ability. Then we have Gunthopter. Gunthopter is a very strong card when you go for it in a sword kind of deck, typically with Imperial Basha or with artillery. Very strong for that. It also has an interesting effect when you need to play it. It allows you to make each of your opponents lose one troop in their garrison if they have one. So that is also a bit destructive, can mess up some plans, and yeah, it's not too bad. The floor is, however, still relatively low because it reveals for no persuasion. So if you don't have really a combat focused deck, you might not be able to get so much out of it. But it's still not the worst, to be honest, in terms of 0 persuasion cards, because of that additional effect as well. You may deploy a troop from your garrison to the conflict, effectively making that troop already being worth 5 strength thanks to those 3 swords. So this can save you a move where you don't necessarily want to go on a combat space, maybe in a given turn. No worries, that Gunthopter still allows to get involved in the combat and get some value out of it potentially. So not too bad, but not crazy high floor. And then the last card costing 4 here is Other Memory. Other Memory is a Bene Gesserit card and has also a unique effect, either drawing a card, which is pretty standard, but the unique part is right here, allows you to get some insanely reliable Bene Gesserit combos, because you can draw a Bene Gesserit card from your discard pile. So in essence, playing this card, knowing that you have the Bene Gesserit card in your discard pile that you want to play, makes your Bene Gesserit combo very strong. Because this is the Bene Gesserit card, so you can get out that BG card from your discard pile, and let's say it's, I don't know, a Missionaria Protectiva, which says if you have a Bene Gesserit card in play, which you have, given you just played that one, you can get a bump in wherever. Or if actually you have Lisan El Gaib as well, it's a Bene Gesserit card that we saw earlier up there. You could take it out and then automatically again have that BG card already in place, so that Lisan Al Gaib could go Fremen, get you a double bump, and go on with that. It also has 2 persuasion, also allows you to draw a card in case you don't have a BG card in your discard. So it is a strong card in essence, a very high floor, and it can have a pretty high ceiling as well. If let's say you have a Kwisatz Haderach or a Lady Jessica in your deck, this is almost a must buy, to be honest, because it allows you to synergize those BG combos and get Lady J or Kwisatz or whatever else strong BG card you might have out of your discard and get it straight into your hand again. So let's now set them up, all those 4 costers we just reviewed, in that matrix you've already seen in the previous 2 episodes. And if you haven't seen them, I recommend to watch them first, obviously, so that you can see it, because I'm aware these are very small and you can't really necessarily understand exactly where every card is situated here. That's why previous episodes can help with that. Anyways, let's start now in the same order as before with Spice Trader. Spice Trader has a high floor, in my opinion, so would come somewhere here, I would assume. And the ceiling is also not too bad with that little spice you could generate, maybe still similar to Test of Humanity in terms of ceiling. So I would put it somewhere here, I think. Then we have Bennett Lelax Researcher. I think this one goes higher in terms both of floor and ceiling. I think I would put it somewhere here. Maybe similar to Dissecting Kit. Those additional research actions though are better than specimens. So yeah, it's maybe it has a lower ceiling because it doesn't necessarily allow you to go for that second beetle. Yet it might allow you to buy more Spicemas floors thanks to that persuasion. So in terms of ceiling, they're probably similar in terms of in terms of floor as well, to be honest. I guess I'll just put it here. Again, it's not to the millimeter here as well. We could argue shifting has a higher floor than in the shadows. I wouldn't disagree. It depends a bit on the game, so I'll just leave them there, and it's more like in the region where they're placed, not the exact millimeter. Web of Power is the next one, and this one would probably go somewhere here. Easily also in that region with those cards, basically. So Clandestine Meeting, I think, has a pretty low floor. Thankfully, it reveals for 2 persuasion, but given it has no agent effect, it's basically convincing at that stage. So it has a relatively low floor in my opinion, maybe somewhere here. But it has a ceiling, so let's put it maybe here though. Because again, it has no agent icon, so plugging that in your deck and gives you a bump and an intrigue, so maybe still a bit of a better ceiling than Protectiva, although Protectiva could send you to a city and get a bump wherever you want, not necessarily Bene. So it's debatable, let's just put it here. Reverend Mother has a strong high floor in my opinion, stronger than those. Although Voice is also pretty good though, but it has faction accesses, 2 faction accesses can be helpful. So it's also in that region. Maybe in terms of ceiling it's not crazy high, although the reveal could act nicely. So it's also in that region, whether it's slightly high or not. It's just for the sake of having them not overlapping too much, I'll just put it here. It could be debatable there. Yeah, I'll just put it there. Guild Chief Administrator has really nice healing as well, just because it brings you Highlander. It allows maybe combos with typically Freighter Fleet and whatnot. It gives also a pretty good floor thanks to that shipping action, so maybe somewhere here, yeah. Smuggler Thopter has a low floor because it still requires you to get that additional that influence on guild, but it has a pretty good ceiling, so I'll put it somewhere here. Not too low of a floor still, because 2 influence with the guild is not so bad. I mean, it's not so hard to get, but still I would put it here. Imperial Basha, I think, has a bit of a higher floor than Smuggled Thopter typically, but the ceiling could be pretty high with those swords decks, so I'll put it somewhere here. Firm Grip definitely goes somewhere here. Lower floor though than those maybe, but higher ceiling. Somewhere here, yeah. Let's put Guild Bankers maybe a bit higher, because that ceiling could be busted. If you get to 12 persuasion, obviously you can get 2 spice for that once, so this makes its ceiling maybe a bit better. Interstellar Conspiracy. Conspiracy has a pretty high ceiling because it can allow for mean little combos. The floor is not crazily good, but it's still 2 persuasion, still a card you can play to get 1 spice, so it probably comes somewhere here, close to Sayadina I guess. Maybe not as high in terms of floor, somewhere there I would say. In terms of ceiling, maybe not as high, and in terms of floor, I think I still rather have the faction accesses. Although this is debatable, they're pretty close to each other again. Duncan, Idaho is probably somewhere in that gamblish quadrant. Pretty low floor in my opinion, because it reveals for 0 persuasion. Ceiling is maybe not as high as the one from X Guild Compact. I guess it still has swords, so yeah, somewhere here I guess. Landing rights for that shipping action on the city space is pretty nice, 2 persuasion. I would put it close to Interstellar Conspiracy. Maybe yeah, somewhere here. Slightly lower ceiling, higher floor, something like that probably. Throne Room Politics. Throne Room Politics has a bit of a higher floor thanks to that passive action, but not a very high ceiling though, so maybe somewhere there, yeah. Lisan Al-Gaib, pretty low ceiling in my opinion, pretty low floor, sorry. Ceiling could be nice for those double bumps and whatnot. I would probably still put it a bit higher here thanks to the faction accesses and the spice on purchase. But double bumps are also fine, so maybe somewhere there, yeah. Guild Ambassador has a floor that is still probably on the low side. Because once you get that guild influence, if you don't get the alliance, you don't get much more value out of it, but the ceiling is high because of that VP potential. So I would put it somewhere there, I guess. Still not extremely low floor, because it can still be nice to generate spies, to go Menta or Technigo or whatnot. Negotiated withdrawal has a high floor. Ceiling is not, I mean, it could be pretty high though, thanks to those rapid mobilization or other kind of combos. Maybe somewhere there. Its floor is also not too bad though. Maybe this one I overestimated a bit the floor, but yeah, doesn't matter. Again, millimeters. Fremen Camp has a floor, but ceiling, yeah, it's still not too bad though. It still allowed you to get some nice troops out. Maybe something here. Gunthopter has a bit of a ceiling, but the floor is, yeah, maybe something there as well, I guess. Yeah, like that. And other memory has a bit of a ceiling thanks to that Bene Gesserit combo it can do for others. The floor is nice thanks to that 2 persuasion, but and for the draw, so maybe still a bit higher than a liaison typically. Liaison should actually maybe even go a bit down here, to be honest. I've been maybe a bit harsh with Fremen Camp now that I think about it, because it's still 2 persuasion and a sword, so the floor is probably a bit better than others. Yeah, let's put it there. And other memory, it's a bit high here. It would probably go in that mess with the others. Maybe I'll just do it something like that. Yeah, I like it there. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it for this matrix with all the cards from now 1, 2, 3, and 4 persuasion set there. So we're still missing a couple, and it will become a bit crowded there, I assume, with a couple of more that will need to go there. But yeah, so far I'm pretty happy with that. As usual, I will share the link for the for this map as with the current state there, so that you can go have a look at this and potentially zoom in and yeah, having a better look. As usual, I'll also just give a quick roundup for those who don't really want to go visit that directly. So here are the gamblish cards, in my opinion. Here are the niche cards. There go the safe cards. And here are what tend towards S tier. S tier would probably start somewhere here, basically. And everything here is very strong A, in my opinion. And then the more we go down, the more it still becomes reasonably A here, maybe high B there, I guess. So yeah, that's where we stand for this. So that would be it for those cards costing 4 persuasion or less. So that was part 3 of that series on the Imperium cards. Stay tuned for part 4, so don't forget to subscribe to make sure you don't miss out for that. We will then cover all the cards from 5 persuasion or more than that, so from 5 to 8 basically. And yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any disagreements with what I've done so far or any other ideas for future episodes. I'm open to any kind of criticism or suggestions. Always happy to hear about what you think for this series. Yeah, as usual, hit that like if you enjoyed. I hope to see you very soon again. Have a good one. Bye bye.